What is eugenics? It's an elitist philosophy for a transhuman man which leaves behind the husk of the underclass. It's a way to wipe out the regular man and devalue human labor. We've reduced ourselves to being nothing more than inventory in a complex system under this nation and under this global treaty. There really is population control in the literal sense going on this planet. And we're tagged, traced, and numbered.
You're listening to Canary Cry Radio. Now here are your hosts, Basil and Gonz.
Hey everybody, welcome again to Canary Cry Radio. Thanks for tuning in this week. We've got a very special show. My name is Basil.
And I'm Gonz, and we have Andrew Hoffman on this week. Andrew is someone I met last year when I was in Branson. We got to hang out at the conference, obviously, but then we got to go travel to Denver, which was kind of both of our layovers. And unfortunately, he didn't come with us to check out some of the murals there in Denver. But Andrew is the author of the book New World Order and Eugenics Wars, A Christian Perspective. And he graduated summa cum laude with a BA in English Literature and a minor in Philosophy at Grand Canyon University. And he has a Master's of Education, also from Grand Canyon University. And he is online. How you doing, Andrew?
I'm doing great, man. It's great to be on the show with the awesome name. I've got to admit, I'm pretty jealous. I told Tim, you guys have a way better name than we do, but...
Oh, shucks.
Yeah.
You're making me blush over here, Andrew. Okay, now before we start getting into stuff, I have to admit that I'm oblivious as to what these Denver murals are that everybody's talking about. And since you guys got to look at them together, actually, I kind of feel left out.
Actually, we didn't get to look at it together because Andrew was way too cool, and him and his wife were like, no, we're going to miss our flight. And
okay, well, I feel fine then.
Yeah,
what are they?
Don't feel left out.
Okay.
So did you make it over there? Did you get to see the infamous murals?
Yeah, it was me and Doug Hamp and Chris Pinto and a few others. We got to go check them out, and yeah, it was interesting. I mean, they're pretty obvious. There was a lot of people walking by, sitting there watching it, looking at it, and you can Google it. I took a couple pictures, I think, that are online now, and there's a whole lot of them. There's not just one. There's like 3 or 4 of them.
What are they? I'm still oblivious over here.
Okay, well, all right.
Is it a huge story? Can I just get a couple words?
Basically, they're just, I don't know. It's just artwork that's very eerie. It's got like a girl sitting in a coffin with holding flowers, and like she has a Bible in her hand, and like there's another one that has this guy with the gas mask and a gun, and the artwork tells a story kind of like going through chaos and coming out of the chaos, and having peace, and there's just all this symbolism everywhere. And maybe we'll do a show just on that in the future because it's pretty heavy.
Yeah, you could interpret it as religion causes massive wars, and then out of the wars comes comes a police state, and then out of that comes a wonderful, peaceful, utopia.
Yeah,
right.
So it's like the New World Order dream. And the girl in the coffin, she's holding a Bible, and then has like the other like religious symbols on her. So she like symbolizes the death of religion and stuff. So it's kind of
wow.
Yeah, it's definitely creepy.
So edgy of them to be against religion.
Yeah,
it's very original and edgy. Okay, so let's get into it, Gonz and Andrew.
All right. Well, the first thing that I wanted to ask you, Andrew, is what prompted you to actually look into the New World Order and the conspiracies and ultimately write the book?
It was 9/11 stuff, and I'd stumbled on it. I think I'd actually seen a video online, like way back, of like the plane kind of hit Pentagon. It was too big, and I didn't even know like what the point of that was, because I was so like still, just if everybody believes that it's true, just assumed it was 9/11 was the way it had happened. Then a couple years later, someone mentioned David Ray Griffin and reading his book. And so it was actually reading that book on 9/11. And then he had quoted lots of guests on the Alex Jones show. So I started listening to that, and then found Chris White's stuff actually really early in the whole process, which was definitely important for me because that was the first kind of true Christian perspective on all the conspiracy stuff. And Chris does such a great job of kind of separating fact from, fiction in the whole conspiracy realm. That's, he's really talented at that. So that was kind of got me off to a good start as far as interpreting things. And yeah, I mean, obviously it's the usual, like once you know they're lying about 9/11, what else are they lying about? And it goes on from there. So
yeah, I mean, much like a lot of us, you kind of start down one rabbit hole, and then it just, the whole world starts to look different as you just keep going deeper and deeper, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was living in Korea, teaching English over there, and I had tons of time. I pretty much every day, because I didn't have to teach until like 4 o'clock. My work hours were 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. So I'd get up and go for like a 3 or 4 hour hike and just listen to podcasts. And I told Chris White, like, hey man, you should write a book and I'll help you with all the, the English stuff with it. And he's like, yeah, that'd be cool, except I don't really want to write a book, but put together an outline and I'll give you advice on it or whatever. So I did that. And he's like, oh yeah, you know all this stuff, just write it yourself. So that was kind of what got it started. And and I have to say, judging from my lack of productivity back in the U.S., that if it wasn't kind of a strange situation for me where I had tons of time on my hands and no real friends and family around, it probably never would have gotten done, because nothing's gotten done since then. So
we can definitely relate to that. Yeah, that's interesting. So what sort of made you how did you figure out the exact way, that direction you wanted to go with the book? Because there's a lot of literature out today, and so how are you sort of able to sort of guide your way into that? Because the book's great, by the way, and make sure everybody go check it out. But what do you guys say?
Well, I think it was kind of vaguely chronological, and trying to tie in kind of secret society stuff with all the usual kind of obscure verses in the Old Testament, Genesis 6 and the Tower of Babel and all that stuff. And then kind of tying that in with Egypt and then on to Freemasonry and all the rest of it. And then kind of shifting gears a little bit to eugenics and stuff that's currently affecting our everyday lives, a little more than kind of the obscure esoteric stuff. So, kind of a mixed bag, and the general idea was, like from a biblical worldview, at least my personal biblical worldview, what stuff out there was intentionally trying to lead people down the wrong path toward New Age stuff or what have you. So.
Right, the eugenics stuff I find is especially sinister. For many reasons. Number one, because the government is largely involved. I mean, it just hits on so many levels. It hits on government levels. It hits on food. It hits on vaccines, and just all sorts of other stuff is all sort of involved in this thing that essentially the goal is killing people or keeping the human race from continuing. It's like almost the most sinister thing I can think of.
Yeah, absolutely. And the really sick part is it all gets framed in humanitarian terms and like, oh, we've got to save the earth, and oh, look at wonderful Bill Gates and the wonderful Rockefeller Foundation, all these things, and they give themselves awards and have media that they own or pay advertising money to, just shower them with praise and adoration. And if you're sucked into that whole like government, kind of the whole myth of government's just a bunch of bumbling politicians, and they just can never get anything done, and they could never keep a secret and this and that. And lots of people are still at that level, and they're so angry right now because they see the country kind of falling apart, but they still think it's all an accident, like, oh, how can these people be so dumb? And it's like, no, not dumb at all.
Yeah, that's the bizarre part is you think that the world is in the shape that it's in because people are dumb. But really, it's all it would be hard to let the world get in the shape that it's in on accident.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. It's just so obvious that it's just a perfect storm of disaster that has to be mastermind.
Before we go on here, I forgot to mention, and this is probably sort of important, but Andrew is also the co-host of Revelation Radio News. So, sorry, Tim. It's probably
well, and that's not the worst of it, because Tim loves you guys and has listened to every single one of the shows, and he's like, "What? You get to go on the show and I don't?" So he's pretty jealous.
Well, I already invited him on with you in the future, so we're gonna have a little round table in the future. So no hurt feelings there, Tim. We're gonna have you on. Don't worry, buddy.
We love you, Tim.
But back to eugenics and just the whole political stuff going on with all that. What would you tell someone, like if you ran into somebody who was just totally like, Bill Gates is God, like just someone that is totally enthralled in that, what would you tell them? Like, how would you, what would you strategically do to try to break down that wall?
That's a great question. And it's probably the fact that I can't really get through to someone, just sitting down and explaining it to them is probably also a big reason why I wrote the book. Because I can frame things better if I'm writing than if I'm just talking to someone. It's almost because with all this stuff, one thing leads into another, and you'd be way better off like just sticking with one thing like fluoride or something like that. But in order for people to understand why fluoride keeps getting out of the water, even though study after study shows that it damages IQ, doesn't do anything good for teeth, and gives bone cancer. You have to go to the eugenics angle and the intentional angle, and then you have to, go everywhere else. So it's a really difficult thing to just kind of, to someone that is starting from scratch. It really is. Someone really has to want to figure it out for themselves. I don't think you can't put something up on your Facebook wall and someone goes like, "Oh wow, I'm sure that's totally correct. I totally changed my view of the world." But maybe you can make someone think and make someone decide to kind of dig into stuff by themselves and give them resources to do that.
Right, and I think that's great because one thing about the eugenics thing is the way that it's so ingrained in everything. It's sort of like the occult, where the occult is involved basically in everything when it comes to the leadership at the top. Well, eugenics is in everything. I can't think of one facet of my life that isn't affected by somebody trying to kill me, but inadvertently through something. You know what I mean? And it's just, it's one of those things that I get a certain tone in my voice when something really bothers me, and this is especially one of those things. And so, anyways, why don't you take us through a couple of nice eugenics steps that
Okay.
Tell me how they're trying to kill me.
All right. Well, one interesting story Tim brought up briefly on our show the other day. Actually, it was yesterday, so it might not even be out yet, but it was from Fox News of all places, and they're talking about fluoride in the water, and they just kind of gloss over. They half-heartedly mention fluoridation started because of industry, public relations campaigns in the 1940s, and they left it very vague. But specifically what happened was Alcoa hired Edward Bernays, and they said, look, we've got this stuff, it's costing us a ton of money to dispose of it. People are complaining that they're getting sick, it's killing livestock. What do we do? So what he did was he found a study that said, fluoridation, in this certain area of the country, people have harder tooth enamel. And I guess that's maybe a good thing. But that was naturally occurring fluoride, not the stuff that Alcoa was producing. But he took that, and pretty much the way he did all this public relations stuff, he had front groups established that pretended to be kind of third-party, independent scientific groups, recommend water fluoridation for public health and what have you. And obviously, the guy was a genius at what he did, and other industry players joined in with the marketing efforts, and all of a sudden you've got water fluoridation all around the country, and you're a crazy conspiracy theorist if you say there shouldn't be fluoride in the water. And this is from the same guy, and I know this is kind of more the propaganda or public relations area of things, but this is the guy who was huge in the tobacco industry, but hated it that his wife smoked and wouldn't smoke himself. So, and this is back in like the 1920s, teens and 20s, when he already knew that just the tobacco companies already knew that smoking was terrible for you and would lead to cancer and other things. So it's kind of this. It's amazing how much of our culture is shaped by the media, and it's been that way for a long time, pretty much since World War I. And from the eugenics end of things, for whatever reason, you can draw a direct line from Darwin to eugenics, because it's the idea of survival of the fittest, and it appealed to these kind of rich, snobby, aristocratic types who believed that they were, or who were told by these pseudoscientists, your family line is superior. Look at all these rabble on the streets, and if they keep having kids, we'll be overrun. And so you get all these foundations, not just Rockefellers, but the Morgans and other kind of robber types in the U.S. to start pouring money into these foundations, and just pushing this idea that you've got inferior human lines and superior human lines, and if you breed the good ones together, you'll end up with this, amazing Superman, the right. Super race, which, obviously that is a direct connection, and there are direct connections with Adolf Hitler and Nazism and the rest of it. But the part that gets left out of history books, and most of you gets left out of history books, is the fact that it didn't end with Hitler. It didn't start with Hitler, and it didn't end with Hitler. It just got better public relations and moved back to what had been its center, really the U.S. and Great Britain.
Right. So when you're talking about the fluoridation of the water and things like this, now are you saying that for instance, like the fluoridation of the water, did that start as sort of a corporate solution to, a profit margin, or was that part of eugenics as as a whole? Like, what came first, the chicken or the egg, or
Right.
is it sort of or do they go hand in hand?
Yeah, I would say it was kind of a win-win for them. Kind of the way most of the things, like if you look at 9/11, you can say like, oh, why would they do 9/11? Is it this reason or that reason? And the answer is probably, all the above.
Right.
They like being able to dumb people down, make them unhealthy so that they're reliant on Rockefellers, and you fund most of the cancer, quote unquote, research and treatments. Then you want more people with cancer. It's good business. So I think it's kind of the same idea, and at the same time, obviously they figured out how to make money kind of both ways with it. So the damaging effects are, I would tend to say that's the main reason is the health effects from the eugenics angle. But it's a little easier to prove the kind of corporate angle, I guess.
Right, and it seems like that's the case with a lot of these types of things. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's even if you look at just recently, there was an article that came out that the army of the future, the soldiers will be able to run at Olympic speed, and with gene technology and all this stuff. I mean, this completely plays into the eugenics idea of like creating these super soldiers. And I find it interesting that it's, people don't really realize that it's a sinister thing. But even those who do, they're like, well, if it's in the military, then it kind of makes sense. But then you're trying, I'm thinking somebody that is in the military, they come home, there's already, problems with post-traumatic stress disorder and all this stuff. I mean, how much worse is it going to be when you come home and it's like, you're like the Hulk, you can't,
right.
you can't function at all in society anymore because you're like this, like genetically enhanced superhuman soldier guy. I don't know. What do you think about how has military actually been sort of the exception to the rule of positive eugenics?
Well, I think you see both positive and negative eugenics. I'm sure they're working on developing super soldiers, but they're also pumping every enlistee in the military full of vaccines, experimental vaccines, basically anything they can poison them with, and using depleted uranium and all the rest. So the kind of Pentagon ideal is someone who will sign up when they're 18, work for them without questioning, do whatever they're told, and then die pretty much, if not in combat, soon after they're out of the military. And so you could kind of see it targeted towards that. So all the flag waving on TV and every sporting event has to have giant American flags and, people wearing ribbons and stuff. And it's all so bogus when you look at the way they're actually treated,
Right. A dead ex-soldier is less expensive than an ex-soldier that you have to pay for their college now because you promised that they would do that. Mm-hmm. I have friends who talk about going into the military, and they start talking about all these great benefits that they're going to get. And it doesn't matter what the economy looks like because the government's going to take care of them. And it's hard for me because as the friend, I want to be like, look, no. Just no is the answer. No, that's not going to happen. And number two, they're going to give you some chemicals that's also going to be a big disappointment to you, no matter what they tell you. And, it's just sort of like, it's really sad, actually. I know all of it's sad, but especially if you know somebody in the military, what a lot of us do at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. the area I'm from isn't a huge military area, although now the hometown I grew up in, Mid River, Oregon, one of the main industries is building drones and working on different components for drones. Lots of people have jobs in that now. But it's horrifically sad. But a lot of people in the military figure it out. And that's why, Homeland Security, their number one concern is returning veterans. And, they don't phrase it this way. They always say, returning veterans with PTSD, SNAP, and whatever. But what they're really worried about is veterans who figured out that they got scammed and that they were fighting wars for reasons, totally different than what they were told, and that they've been used and abused and spit out by the system. And just kind of back to your original question about the super soldiers, yeah, that's a big problem. If you've got someone who's not only trained with weapons, but with, been enhanced with superhuman strength and all these things, that's a big problem for Janet Napolitano and company. Yeah,
well, I think, let's jump in a little bit to the propaganda side of it that you've mentioned a little bit already, but, because it obviously it ties in together, yes. and the public perception of what's really going on is far from reality. But, you had mentioned the American flags, and again, it's one of those things that, as I talk to people about some of these topics, it's very hard to get them to see sort of the propaganda at work. So one of the things that I'm always curious about is how other countries see the United States. And so do you have a view on that, of like how other countries look at us, and are they like pointing and laughing at us because they're like, can you guys not see the obvious propaganda going on here? And what was the origin of propaganda? Like, where did it start?
Sure. I'll try to answer those questions in order, but I think it totally depends on the country, but at the same time, mass media is so dominant worldwide that people, I would say, generally are under their own kind of strain of propaganda. And unless it's a country that's like hostile to the U.S., where they get told, true bad things about the U.S. If you think of like Russia today, the criticism of Russia today is like, oh, that's financed by the Kremlin and that's, Russian propaganda. That's true, but they know, because they learned this from American propaganda, that telling true things about your enemy is more effective than making up lies about them. So, I think there is, outside of the U.S., there is more kind of skepticism about American motives, especially American militarism and adventurism. I would say people outside the U.S. are much more likely to see it as an empire. You really have to fully buy into the Kool-Aid to just believe everything, we're fighting for freedom. We're the terrorists hate us for our freedoms and all that stuff. So, there is a little more skepticism, but man, I'll tell you what, there's in lots of other countries, and I haven't been in lots of other countries, but if you look at the propaganda in England, it's pretty easy, since we speak the same language, to look at that. It's just as bad or further along the line. And, spending time in South Korea, those kids, when they go to learn English, because almost all of them, they go to public school during the day, and then they go to these private academies at night. Generally, 3 or 6 more hours of school on top of your regular school day. And what the curriculum is all United Nations garbage. It's like global warming every day. And these kids are convinced that, they're killing the earth and cars are bad and their parents are bad for having a car and this and that. And so it's not just people in the U.S. that are getting propaganda. It's all over the world. Now, as far as where did it start, I think there's always been some elements of propaganda throughout history, but most people now, people that write books about propaganda or about public relations really look at World War I and the U.S. propaganda effort there as kind of the first mass media, mass mobilization propaganda. And it really caused a revolution, not only in as far as war propaganda goes, but as far as the way business was conducted. Because you had already had the Industrial Revolution, and companies needed, they could create products faster than they could find people to buy them. And so they needed kind of this mass media, this mass advertising to find markets for their products. So they latched on to these same people that were involved in the World War I propaganda effort to come, work with their companies, and it really revolutionized the way business was done,
right?
Marketing and PR and what have you. So,
right. Well, let me ask you this, because I know that you and a lot of people, and myself included, have felt that somebody like Alex Jones has been really kind of vital in helping expose a lot of stuff that's going on. But there are a lot of people now that are sort of disenchanted with Alex Jones because of sort of his alleged ties with the Jesuits and the Roman Catholic Church. And what are your thoughts on that? Do you know anything about that? Or because I come across people that just, if you quote Alex Jones or something, they're immediately like, oh, I don't know if I can hang with you guys, because Alex Jones is like part of the propaganda. And
well, right. I mean, we even had him on one of the intros a few episodes ago, and somebody was like, "Oh, I was really disappointed to hear that," and it's like, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, my take on Alex Jones is that he's a really, really talented talk show host, and
I think that's a good explanation. That's exactly what it is.
He's really good at what he does. I mean, the guy, if he talked about sports, he would be a successful talk show host, doing sports stuff. And I think that's kind of where they're like, oh, how does he get all these big guests and he do this and that? He must be, an agent of the dark side and what have you. And it's like, no, it's because people like money, and they know that if they go on Alex's show, millions of people are listening to him. And the reason millions of people are listening to him is because he's good at what he does. Right. I mean, I could come up with some genius theory of how the world works, but I could never present it in a way that would get millions of people to listen to me. Right. And I think kind of people I don't know if it's jealousy or what have you, but there's that aspect to it. And then there's kind of once you get so disenchanted with things, with 9/11, it sometimes seems like everything's a lie. So people kind of go into,
right.
Tim refers like discernment overdrive, where it's like everyone's an agent. I had people tell me like, oh, did you know that Chris White is a CIA agent? I'm like, oh, really?
Chris White, really? Is that what he's doing in Africa?
I hung out at his house when him and Tom Bionic lived there and slept on their couch, and I don't know where they're spending all their government finances and stuff like that, but other than the nice Berkey water filter, there wasn't too much largesse going on there. But it's it honestly, and you guys. If you keep going with the show, you'll have people start saying like, oh, they're really bad and they did this and that. And it just kind of goes with the territory of the internet, because there's just kind of, it's like a law of physics on the internet. If you are saying something, there's going to be someone, making up a negative website about you or what have you. Right. And, and for Alex Jones, and like I said, he's a really talented talk show host. He's not a prophet. He's not an oracle of truth. He's just good at what he does, but it doesn't mean doesn't mean he's right all the time or anything else. But the fact that he's not right all the time does not mean that he is purposefully deceiving people or what have you. Right. Because the way I look at it, if you recorded me talking for 3 hours a day and trying to be kind of edgy and entertaining and what have you, I would say so many stupid things that you could play back, 10 years later and say, look at this idiot, like Y2K, he thought Y2K was going to be bad. It's like, well, yeah, lots of people, the evening news was saying Y2K was going to be bad. So it's not like, whatever. Right.
But, well, yeah, hopefully nobody figures out me and Gonz's CIA ties.
There you go.
We're in trouble.
Yeah, that wouldn't be good.
And as far as the, if you look at all the claims about Alex Jones, like they're pretty mutually exclusive. Like, I don't know how he would be a Jesuit coadjutor and a Zionist agent.
Right. Yeah, no, I saw that too. That's why I wanted to ask you, because when I saw there's one particular website that really goes after him, and it's like all the evidence is here, and I was looking at it, and I'm going, wow, really? All this stuff? It's this is
this Photoshop picture of his wife into a Jewish wedding photo, like, wow, you've got him.
Right. I mean, it's tough, especially in the conspiracy world, because it's so easy to do that, to be like, oh, this, like, for instance, if I was the government and I wanted to take down Basil and Gonz, all I would have to say is leak it out that, oh yeah, Basil and Gonz are working for us. So stop listening to them. Well, and and what I was going to say before was, in the conspiracy world, it's so easy to just sort of like, almost like the new gossip of conspiracies. It's like, oh, there's this, did you hear this? Oh, no way. I thought he was a good guy. No, he's evil. He's out to get everybody. Just whoever it is, whether Alex Jones is CIA or not. It's a lot of times in the conspiracy circles, it's so easy to flip flop like that, depending on what alleged piece of evidence comes out.
Well, yeah. And I think also once people get, I think, Andrew, you alluded to this a little bit, but once people get to a certain level of like fame or whatever, it always does that. People are always gonna say something. It's like it's like when you're into a band when they're new and you're like, oh man, this band is the best band ever, and then they get like a major record deal and you're like, man, they suck, they sold out,
Oh, Mumford and Sons.
is the new Mumford. See, the nice thing, like, and I thought I'd never be this guy, but I'm totally the guy who like only listens to bands that I liked 10 years ago and just waits for their new albums to come out. But I did finally get a Mumford and Sons album, but I'm like back on their beginning stuff. So
yeah.
I just won't even bother with their new one, I guess.
Yeah. You just gotta stick with the oldies, the 2010. Okay. We're getting way off topic here.
That was a good analogy though, because it is like, oh wait, like, it's someone who totally got woken up by Alex Jones and gets all their news from InfoWars and Prison Planet, and then they're like, what, you still don't know that Alex Jones is a secret double agent? And they're just like, they're pulling stories off their website and putting them on their own website, and
right.
It's like, okay, whatever. But and it is, if you look at, because they're kind of moving from just a website that took a lot of different kind of interesting stories from all over the place and put them all in one place, where they're actually kind of doing original reporting more and more now. So you're seeing kind of a new version of the alternative media, where it doesn't necessarily just have to be us with a different take on the mainstream media. So we're still talking about all the same stuff they are. We're just saying they're lying about it, which is kind of what the alternative media to some extent is like, oh yes, we'll talk about the same stories, but you're lying about them. Right. And here's the problems with it. And I think there's value to that, but I think there would be more value in kind of establishing a truly alternative media that chooses more than the 3 stories that mainstream media chooses to talk about in a given day. So,
right, exactly. I mean, I kind of want to talk about some more eugenics stuff. Were you hoping to go in a different direction here, Gonz?
No, I'm open to eugenics. I think that's kind of the
right. I kind of want to get back to some eugenics. Is that okay with you, Andrew?
Man,
all right.
Your wish is my command.
Oh, I like this. All right. Okay.
I'm having some deja vu here. There must be some weird thing going on.
I think it's us supposed to be talking about eugenics.
Probably. Go ahead.
Okay. So, I mean, I guess I don't even have really something specific, but I guess we can start with, is there anything that I'm not aware of that's trying to kill me? I mean, I know about the fluoride. I know about the GMOs and stuff like that. Why don't you just give us a couple more examples here?
Well, I mean, you got the chemtrail issue. So in the air we breathe, in the water we drink, in the food we eat, and the 2 kind of general areas that I think, if you look at the quote side effects of all these products and genetic engineering and what have you, it seems that they always attack either intelligence and or fertility. So they're trying to make you not be able to have kids and dumb down the people that are around. So I think if you look at such a broad spectrum of issues and they all have those effects, that's on purpose. It's not an accident. There's an agenda there. So
what about like vaccines? I know you guys talk about it quite a bit on Revelations Radio News, but what's the sinister part of that? Because I've heard people say, well, you're being a conspiracy nut if you really think that they're trying to kill you through vaccines. And I know I was shot up with all sorts of stuff when I was born, and you probably can't even get out of a hospital these days unless you have certain amounts of vaccines, pumped into you. So,
well, I mean, you never know when a 12-hour-old baby is going to contract hepatitis. So obviously they must be vaccinated, and if you don't think that that's necessary, you're just playing with fire. So
you're just a mean person. You're a bad parent.
You're endangering everyone else.
Why do you want babies to have hepatitis? What's wrong with you?
So, and there's kind of 2 angles with vaccines. You can attack it from, do they really work? And in a lot of cases, like flu shots, especially, just flat out don't work.
Right.
I mean, they're just guessing like, out of the thousands of possible flu strains that could come out this year, we think it's going to be this one, and we'll make a vaccine for it. And most of the time, they're totally wrong.
Right. Well, exactly. With if I can interject real quick on the flu thing, that's an especially personal one for me because my family, especially my extended family, and what I would call not early ancestors, my most recent ancestors have. Many of them have died from the flu shot. Like, it's in my blood to die of the flu shot. And so when it comes to, I think I was in like kindergarten or in school and stuff, and it's family history to die of the flu shot, and they almost wouldn't let me go to school because I couldn't get it. It was almost like, please die or we're not going to teach you math.
Well, yeah, I mean, please die, because dying is better than being a conspiracy theorist. And
I think they knew.
Well, it's kind of saying, and the thing with vaccines, okay, so it's not just the reported negative side effects, because they never admit to them. You could take a vaccine, die 12 hours later, and they'll say no connection at all.
Right.
Because, well, how do you know there's no connection? Well, because vaccines are safe. Well, how do you know they're safe? Well, because, we've proven they're safe. Well, this person just died from it. How do you know it wasn't? Oh, well, because we know that vaccines are safe. So it's just kind of, it's this tenet of faith that vaccines aren't harm, vaccines are safe. And I don't know, do you guys get like government propaganda messages in place of commercials down there too?
Once in a while, yeah. I try to stay away from the television, but once in a while.
Well, this is I'm talking about radio. Take it the sports station in town here, the ESPN radio station. Like every commercial is government propaganda because I guess they can't get like actual advertising, but it's all like I've taken time to shoot my kids up with the flu vaccine, and if you don't, you're a bad parent. And
right.
There's all sorts of different. Like someone dying on the commercial because they have diabetes and, oh, you never saw it coming. And it's, I don't know, just one after another. But anyway, and then you go into any grocery store,
right?
And it's get your shingles vaccine, get your flu shot.
It's everywhere.
We'll give you 10% off your groceries at Safeway if you just get vaccinated today. It's like, really? I mean, if you get a couple $100 at groceries, that's that's a big discount. But, and then you're walking down the aisle and it's like fluoride water for babies. And it's like, man, I have to say, I think Safeway might be the most evil grocery store I've come across.
We don't really have Safeway down here, but
you don't?
Well, what's interesting? It's so funny. This has been just a hilarious part of my life. Let me tell you, I grew up in a place where Safeway was the only grocery store. Bank of America was the only bank, the real bank. If you want to be a real human being, you go to that bank. And it's just the worst stuff. And it comes out Bank of America is like the most evil corporation in history. Yeah. And Safeway is kind of the same way. And I'm like, man, I was really just thrown right into the thick of it from the beginning there. Allergic to the flu shot, had to bank at Bank of America. Like there's some serious, I've come out of some serious adversity, I guess.
I've paid a lot of extra money to Bank of America for some fees that I have no idea.
Oh yeah, they love me over there because of all the fees I owe them.
Oh man, I had Wells Fargo for a long time, and I finally freed myself of their clutches, and I was so proud. I went to the little local credit union. Right. Which promptly merged with another credit union and renamed itself Celerity with like the sun symbol, and then it merged with the Catholic credit union, so it's like all this sun imagery and stuff. I'm like, no, can't switch banks again.
I know, man. They're following you wherever you go.
Well, we got some Korean banks down here. Maybe you can, go back to your roots as a teacher. And
there we go.
Maybe you could pay your fees that way and teach English.
There you go.
Okay, one thing I wanted to bring up was the stuff that people don't really. Okay, a big thing we hear when we're like, oh, there's bad stuff in this food. Stop putting bad stuff in this food. And then companies come out and they say, well, yeah, but if you don't eat too much, it's not bad for you. It's perfectly fine to have this amount of stuff. And number one would be sugar. I mean, sugar really is, it really is a poison. Whether you want to admit it or not, I know a lot of chocolate lovers and people like that who would like to say otherwise. But I mean, the fact of the matter is, they're perfectly correct when they say, look, high fructose corn syrup is not bad for you in the levels that we're using in our product. Well, every single product, if every single product you're using all day long has high fructose corn syrup, I mean, you're doing a bad job at, you're now a victim of this sort of high fructose corn syrup, just induced coma that you get to fall asleep with at night, because all day long that's all you've been having is 1,000 safe dosages of high fructose corn syrup
until you decide to get healthy and go on hundreds of doses of aspartame all day long.
Exactly. And it's so funny because every single sugar replacement stays healthy for about 2 years. That's like the healthy limit for new types of sweetener. And then, of course, 2 years later, everybody gets cancer, and then you can't have that one. But lucky for you, we've come out with this new sweetener. We saw this coming 2 years ago, so we've been putting together and branding this other one for 2 years. So here you go. So, I mean, off the top of your head, can you think of anything else like that that's just in everything waiting for us?
Oh, I think, that's a big one. And then the genetically modified crops like corn. I mean, there's corn in everything. It's crazy. And whether it's the corn syrup or other, corn products that you don't know you're eating GMO stuff, but you are, if you're not, and you can't even specifically pick something out that's non-GMO because they can't label it as that, because our wonderful government, the FDA, there to protect us from all evil, won't allow companies to put on their packaging that it's not genetically modified. So right. And I just read something or found something on the internet the other day about sort of how to tell if the fruit that you're buying is genetically modified or not. And here, I think I just saved it. I found it here. It says, here are the basics of what you should know. If there are only 4 numbers in the PLU, and that's the little sticker, like on your apple, there's a little sticker there. If there's only 4 numbers in the PLU, this means that the produce was grown conventionally or traditionally with the use of pesticides. If there are 5 numbers in the PLU code and the number starts with 8, this tells you that the item is a genetically modified fruit or vegetable. If there are 5 numbers in the PLU code and the number starts with 9, this tells you that the produce was grown organically and is not genetically modified. So if you look there and just use your reasonable human brain that God gave you when you were born. Okay, so traditional fruit have 4 letters. Or 4 numbers on the little sticker. That's easy. The genetically modified fruit has 5 numbers, starts with an 8. The non-genetically modified safe organic fruit also has the same amount of numbers, but starts with 9. So you could obviously tell the difference because the signals are so blatant there. How could you not know that you were getting a GMO banana there? So I had seen that on Facebook, and now I've heard it on Canary Cry. So there you go. With the combination of those 2 things, I know it's true. So there we go.
It's we said it and Facebook said it. So like everything on the internet, it must be true.
Must be true.
Let me ask you this, Andrew. Is there any instance where you see positive use of eugenics? Like, is there something that, like, if you ran the world, right, and you weren't evil,
let's assume.
And you had this thing, eugenics, in front of you. What kind of thing? How would you use it, and what kind of? How can eugenics be used in a positive sense?
Well, I don't know if eugenics can be used in a positive sense. There are positive trends. I mean, like if you look at milk and the stuff with the RBST. It's pretty hard to find that anymore because people, when given a choice, chose the stuff without it. Even though the FDA said it's totally safe, you're a crazy conspiracy theorist if you think anything's wrong with it, people chose to buy the stuff that didn't have it in there.
Right. And so specifically with milk, just real quick, if I may, the thing that made me go bonkers on the antibiotic stuff was that the most remote third world countries in the world were banning it, and the USA still allowed it. And it's like, there's the jokes like, oh, let's go to this country, you can do anything there, you can buy guns and buy heroin from 5-year-olds, and, oh, but you can't get milk that's been treated with antibiotics. That's America. That's our thing,
Well, it was a twist of logic too, because it was like, every other country was saying, hey, well, there's no proof that this is safe. And America was going, well, there's no proof that it's harmful. So
you can't prove it's killing that many people.
Think of all the other things that we're killing. I mean, other people are dying from,
Yeah.
Could be any number.
So I think that's a positive trend. I think if people are given a choice, and that's why Monsanto has lobbied so hard to keep, not just from being required to label it as GMO, but keep other companies from labeling their stuff as not GMO. The reason they're battling so hard is they know that people will choose once they get a little information. People aren't that dumb. Eventually they kind of figure out, like, okay, well, if I can buy this or this, and I'm not sure if this is safe, I'm going to buy the other thing. And so I think that's a positive trend. And if you look at the kind of top level eugenicists, like if you look at British royalty or people like that, they're obsessed with eating organic stuff.
Right.
They'll fly their own food around the world after them, and their own chefs and what have you.
Which probably goes to show that there is something going on, more sinister than what people might imagine, if the people running it won't even eat the stuff that they're telling people to eat.
Right. And a lot of them won't even drink alcohol. Like, they know that that's not a good thing to do either. And it's something that's such a huge part of our culture that it's like, oh, no, I'm not going to eat GMO corn. I'm going to get hammered tonight.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like this.
That is true. That's kind of like the liberal, trendy version of it. Like,
exactly.
I only eat stuff from a farmer's market and then get totally wasted.
Exactly.
But, yeah, that's something. Basil, are you in California as well? Or are you guys both in California?
Yeah, I am.
So it's kind of a West Coast liberal trendy thing.
Oh yeah, it's everywhere. What about birth control? I know that's probably a pretty big one too, with Planned Parenthood and everything. And I remember probably when I was in high school, there was these radio shows on. There was one specifically that I used to listen to where there was a doctor on. It was actually Dr. Drew. I think he's got his own TV show now or something. But he was a big proponent of Planned Parenthood, and these people would call in with my boyfriend got me pregnant, I'm 15, I don't know what to do. And, he would refer them to Planned Parenthood, and you have to go there. And, so in my head as a kid, I was like, oh, that's what you do if, you have problems or whatever. So it's like, can you give us a little overview of Planned Parenthood and how that plays into the whole eugenics as well?
Planned Parenthood started out as, unless I'm getting them mixed around, but the Birth Control League. And then, and originally they started out, and Margaret Sanger was their founder, and they pushed birth control. And the idea was, hey, we're going to push this on all the poor people. And then we're going to encourage the, wealthy, smart, happy people to have lots of babies. And of course, the exact opposite happened. All the rich people started using birth control, and the poor people just kept right on having kids. So some poetic justice to that. And then after World War II and eugenics getting such a horrific reputation, they really changed the emphasis. They said, people don't actually like it when you tell them that they're inferior genetically and that they should not have children because of that. And you would think the geniuses of the elite would be able to figure this out in less than 50 years, but it took them about that long. And so they said, what if we, instead of telling them that they're inferior, why don't we tell them that every child deserves a safe and healthy and happy home? Because who can argue with that? Right. But then, of course, how do you establish that? Well, if the government says, that you're not providing that, then the government needs to take control of these kids. And that's where you've got, all these family courts and the the system that's in place today goes back to eugenics. And so all these, kind of feel good, oh, save the children, they're watch out, their father's abusive or what have you. There was that element to it. And then they figured out that kind of economic necessity kept a lot of couples together. Like if you kind of needed a man around to go get a job, even if it wasn't a very good job, to put food on the table. But if the government gave money for those poor single mothers, because, those, who wouldn't want to provide for the poor single mothers, then they figured out that incentivized getting, out of wedlock, having kids, women leaving their husbands, and kind of this alienation of men away from being fathers and what have you. And we're just kind of like perpetual adolescents,
right.
Obsessed with sports and sex and everything else. But with no real role to play in society because it's been taken over by the government. And I know, people I know from work and what have you, this couple, they've been together forever, but they've got 2 kids and they still haven't gotten married. And I know the main reason is because the government dole gets cut off once they get married, because she's no longer a single mother and making no money and what have you. So it incentivizes, these behaviors so that the state can play the role of parents. So.
Well, there was, I think in our 3rd episode, if I'm not mistaken, we talked about an article that basically with the new Obamacare, they regulated free sterilization for like college women or whatever. And I think Basil was the one that brought up the point, like, what a great target population or whatever of college-aged women, where they are so, not that there's anything wrong with them, but just a great time to have them make very rash decisions, Right.
Well, yeah, it's they're offering permanent sterilization to be covered, and it's like, well, I mean, who better to aim that service to than young, naive girls who are, in college and ready to party? I mean, it just...
And they're convinced that they're killing the earth anyway, and they're...
Right, and they don't...
Footprint,
and they don't want to bring a child into this messed up world. I mean, I hear that all the time. Is like, why would I want to bring a kid into this world? It's so messed up. Which, I mean, I understand where they're coming from, but it's not by accident that they've come to that conclusion. Yeah, absolutely.
But at the same time, it kind of continues the same old pattern where so you've got these like middle class and upper class girls sterilizing themselves in college, and then again, kind of the opposite of the supposed goals of eugenics. You've got the only people with having kids are having them when they're 15. So
right.
And it is sad, but on a different level, you can kind of see why God designed things the way that He did. So that kind of the human race goes on despite the eugenicists' best efforts to stop it,
Right, yeah,
you
exactly.
see everything backfiring to a certain extent. You see lots of damage from it too, and there's a horrific societal cost to pay for the way, for the loss of the family structure that we had in this country, for that going away. In fact, in China, those evil commies over there, they're figuring out, they're like, well, we really hate Christianity. Man, Christians make really good citizens. Like they have,
it's kind of like
over
Rome
there,
all over again.
Over there, if you're a Christian, like you're a real Christian, you're not, messing around.
Right.
Like in the American South or something. So they can see, like, hey, they're not addicted to drugs. They're moral and upstanding citizens. So how can we like not embrace Christianity, but get the positive effects from it? So they're trying to make deals with the churches over there, and they're saying, just let the state, just go, you can be a Christian, but just go to the state-approved church. And for the most part, they're saying, no thanks. We'll take our chances in our house churches. So.
Right.
Yeah, kind of like, sort of like how Constantine started implementing some of his paganism, and merging it with Christianity. And because I'm sure that there was an outcry of like, hey, you can't just kill people for what they believe and whatnot. So anyway, we talk a lot about transhumanism on the show, or we used to anyway. And eugenics is definitely a part of that, the ultimate goal of becoming gods and becoming immortal and this superior race and all that stuff. It's all tied together. But where do you see things going as far as the timeline of where we are? And obviously, there's a lot of people saying that we're nearing the end and we're in prophetic times and stuff like that. Where are you on that whole conversation?
I guess I'm, and what do I know? It's my own 2 cents. That's all it is. But I think we're probably further away than lots of people think we are. And I could totally be wrong on that. But I think, the progression, it can still get a lot worse, which is somewhat, it's obviously getting worse at a very fast rate, but I think it could still get a lot worse. I think America is probably relatively close to really splintering and falling apart, but that doesn't necessarily mean biblically that we're at the end.
Right.
And I think people don't like come out and say that, but you can you feel stuff falling apart with the economy and everything else, but that doesn't mean on God's timetable it's not like, oh, America's falling apart, well, that's it then. So,
right. Well, it's funny you say that, because I was just talking to a friend last night, and she's like, and she knows what I do and what I like to, the crazy books that I like to read by the crazy writers. And she's like, so, like, what are you doing? Like, if you think the world's going to end, why are you doing what you do? Like, why don't you go do crazier stuff? I feel like you're being cautious. And I try to explain, it's not like I think the world's going to end. I just see the things that are happening, and it's going to get a lot worse. And so, it's good to be in the know. And then she's like, okay, but why are you doing what you're doing if you think the world is going to end? And I'm like, what are you?
Just go to Vegas, man.
Yeah, exactly. And it came to the point, she was so persistent, and it came to the point where I was like, what are you expecting me to say? Like, what does me not looking cautious because of the end of the world, like, what does that look like to you? Like, what are you expecting me to do? I'm not going to, I don't even know what I would do if I thought the world was going to end. Mostly because I wouldn't really care once it did, because I'd be doing other awesome stuff. But so, yeah, it's an interesting, I'm not even sure where I was going with this, but just as a cultural note as to what I'm sure a lot of other people like me are dealing with.
And as far as the transhumanism tie-in to that, there is the verse about no flesh. If, God didn't intervene, there would be no flesh left on the earth. And does that tie into man merging with machine? And I think it certainly could. I think generally these transhumanists are probably overly optimistic. I think it's their lie, their false belief system that gets held out to each generation of them. Like, oh, your generation is going to be the one that lives forever. Like, oh, now your generation will be the one that lives forever.
And sort of Christianity does the same thing too.
Yeah, with the prophecy stuff. This is the end. This generation is the end. And,
right. Yeah. I'm sorry to interrupt. Keep going, Andrew.
Well, but I've heard you guys talk about this as far as it being kind of the materialist religion of, or, you know, kind of the natural human need that God gave us to understand, hey, I'm going to die. I don't want to die. I know there's something bad there if I don't get right with God. And they've kind of morphed that into, oh, we can conquer it ourselves. It's the ultimate kind of human pride, human rebellion. You know, God is dead, but I will live forever because of science. So it's kind of,
right.
It's a very rebellious thing. And, you know, the old joke written on my, the whiteboard in my college philosophy class, you know, God is dead dash Nietzsche, and then underneath it, Nietzsche is dead / God. So,
yeah, exactly.
You know, I mean,
yeah,
there is kind of that element to it. I think that it only gets as crazy as God allows it to get.
right.
At the same time, it can get a lot crazier, and we do have a job to do. And I think
right.
there's, and it doesn't mean, you know, necessarily holding a sign on a street corner saying that the world's about to end, or that, you know, the end is near, or whatever, but it is living purposefully and not living just for entertainment or what have you. So
Right. Have you seen the new digital, and I'm not sure how I feel about promoting this on the show, but there's a new digital series out on YouTube called H+, and which is, as you might know, is the sort of the name for the worldwide transhumanism movement sort of going on. And the I've been trying to keep up with it because I just want to see what it is, because they start out with, I mean, everybody has this the internet implant in their head, and this is sort of a, you know, the era of transhumanism, and then somebody hacks into the network and a virus kills everybody who has these implants, you know. And so I'm interested because of my...
And it's done by Warner Brothers, which makes it really interesting.
Right, and it's very suspicious because it's very well done. I mean, it's definitely a commercial deal. Very well done, named after the transhumanism movement, but yet in the first couple episodes, it seems very anti-transhumanist. As we go on, we'll watch and see, you know, if it turns around in the transhumanist state of the world.
Maybe it's only anti-dumb transhumanists, but they know the secret way to do it the right way so that everything works out great. You know?
Yeah,
interestingly, it hasn't been as popular as I thought it would be. It only has, well, I mean, tens of thousands of hits instead of, you know, I would expect hundreds of thousands or millions, you know, if it's promoted by Warner Brothers. But it did bring up some interesting issues. I think what they were trying to do also is to try to bring up some very common social and just interactive issues, because, you know, in one of the first ones, there's a couple, they're like going on vacation or something, and they both have implants, and, you know, she's in the passenger seat, and she's, you know, they have like the whole HUD kind of thing where they can like visually see all the, you know, her emails or whatever, and she can use her hands to like manipulate it and everything, but she's the only one that can see it, you know. But the husband is driving, and he's like driving crazy. They're in this like parking structure, and they're trying to find a spot, and he like runs into a dude and all this stuff. And, you know, he's basically, what was going on was he was watching like a football game or something through this thing. And, you know, and she's like, "You're watching the game, aren't you?" And he's like, "I only had it on 20% transparency." And like, you know, so I don't know. I think they're trying to get at the potential issues, and she's talked about how it's illegal to do that and all this stuff. So they're trying to bring up these social factors, these potential different, you know, possibilities and problems that would arise out of it.
Yeah, you could solve that by just not allowing people to drive cars and having the wonderful robots do that.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the Google cars.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I mean, the crazy conspiracy nut inside of me, you know, makes me, you you start to wonder, like, what exactly is happening with this TV series, because you always want to follow the money, and the transhumanists have the money, and so there's not a rogue group of anti-transhumanists who somehow got Warner Brothers.
Warner Brothers, yeah.
Exactly. Like, that just isn't happening. So you have to figure exactly what's happening. And so, and I'm sure as we keep watching, it's going to have a pro-transhumanism twist. I think there's like 6 episodes out now. I haven't quite watched all of them, but maybe I'll do that so I can talk a little bit more educated.
At this stage too, almost any mention of transhumanism is pro-transhumanism, just because most people don't even know about it.
Yeah.
So just getting the idea out there, and then like, okay, let's have a debate on the pros and cons. It's a process. It's a process of normalizing, and I think they've figured out that if you come out and say this is great, everyone will love it, it will be perfect, that people don't go for that as much as if they feel like, oh, like this is, I can have an opinion on this and we can argue about it, and then it happens anyway.
Right, and it's funny because, if you read some of the comment sections, it's hilarious because this one guy was like, I'm an atheist and I know this is wrong, but is it even more wrong that I still want it? And yeah. I mean, just totally being honest, and because it looks cool. It's like, oh, that'd be awesome. You're hooked into the internet and you can, manipulate all. I mean, to be honest, it does look cool. Like, that would be really awesome. But at the same time, I know that that's probably not what you want to be doing. And, there's also all sorts of,
Plus the virus would get you.
The virus. Yeah. Well, it's kind of like that movie. What was the movie called? It was a Bruce Willis movie.
The Islander.
No, I think it's called the Surrogate, where
that's right.
Yeah, it's the same kind of deal where they're in, these people get hooked up to these surrogate machines and they experience kind of like an avatar, and then a virus shows up and Bruce Willis comes and saves the day. So anyway, yeah, I think you're right. I think that they're trying to just familiarize the public with the concept. And, certainly there's, these major motion pictures that do sort of these elaborate, super, transformers, and well, that's a little different, but I mean, just this idea of like man-machine merging, that's kind of been around for a while, but making it tangible, making it realistic. One of the things that they have on their channel is
so cool.
Yeah, and
too.
Cool. They have an actual ad that they try to, they made it look like a real, campaign ad type thing for the chip, and I mean, anyone who doesn't know otherwise would be like, whoa, is this real?
Right. Well, it's the introduction video for those who are wanting the chip. And you watch it and it's, it's on YouTube, so it's short and they just make it seem real, like kind of like a War of the Worlds type thing. But, it's done in a way where you could very much see that being a real thing soon. And so.
Yeah. Well, Andrew, are you working on anything else other than Revelation Radio News? Are you planning to write a sequel to the book?
I had wanted to do a book on propaganda stuff and got some of it done, and haven't worked on that in quite a while. I did too much research, I had too much stuff, and then couldn't fit it all into one book. So I guess the short answer would be no, not right now. My excuse is my day job is a little more significant than it used to be, so it takes up a lot of my time, and then by the time I'm done, I don't really feel like using my brain a whole lot more. But so I'm kind of the usual American drone at this point.
The man's got you, man.
Yeah.
All right. Well, man, it's been real great having you on the show. Real fun talk. I'm sure everybody was thoroughly edified and entertained for the past, hour or something here. Andrew Hoffman, everybody. Any last words, Mr. Hoffman?
Well, thanks for having me on. I guess if you guys want to tell Tim that I'm retiring and going out on top, I've made Canary cry. So this was kind of the last thing on the bucket list for alternative media. So I'm done. I'm out. That's it.
All right, Tim. Well, sorry, Tim. Maybe we'll get you on the show and you can go the same way, and you can both grow old and reminisce about how you were on Canary Cry Radio together.
Absolutely.
All right, Andrew Hoffman, everybody. Thanks for coming on the show.
Well, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun, and I enjoy your guys' show, and keep up the good work.
There we go. Andrew Hoffman, author of New World Order and Eugenics Wars, A Christian Perspective, eugenicswars.com and revelationsradionews.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Canary Cry Radio. The show notes for this episode and many others are available at canarycryradio.com. Make sure to connect and like our Facebook page at facebook.com/canarycryradio. Follow us on Twitter at Canary Cry Radio. If you would like to share the show in video format, you can find us on YouTube by searching Canary Cry Radio. We would like to thank those of you who have given us your support, prayers, and donations. If you would like to join us and support Canary Cry Radio financially, you could do so by visiting canarycryradio.com and clicking the support tab. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, remember to think outside the cage.